Thanks, Chris, and thanks to you for tuning in. I'm Chris Jansing, in for Elle Sharpton, who will be joining us shortly. Tonight's lead, face-to-face with her captor. Remarkable drama unfolded inside a Cleveland courtroom today. The Cleveland kidnapper, Ariel Castro, stood just feet away from one of his captives as he was sentenced to life in prison plus 1,000 years. In a chilling scene, Castro appeared to turn around and look directly at Michelle Knight, the first woman he abducted. But she didn't waver. After years of imprisonment, she would not be silenced.
Days never got shorter. Days turns into nights. Nights turns into days. Years turned into eternity. I knew nobody cared about me. He told me that my family didn't care. I spent 11 years in hell. Now your hell is just beginning. I will overcome all this that happened, but you will face hell for eternity. From this moment on, I will not let you define me.
I will not let you define me. Those were the words from a woman who was lured into Castro's House of Horrors back in 2002. Today, prosecutors revealed new and horrifying details about how he abducted the three women. He lured Miss Knight there by promising her a puppy for her son. Prosecutors showed just how gruesome it was inside the torture chamber. Here you can see pictures of 100 feet of chains Castro used to imprison his captives. The extent of the evidence was jaw-dropping. But Castro himself shocked the courtroom when he stood up and gave riveting and rambling testimony.
What I'm trying to get is that these people are trying to paint me as a monster, and I'm not a monster. I'm sick. My sexual problems have been so bad on my mind that I'm impulsive. But eventually I married, had 4 children. Lived a normal life. But I still practiced the art of touching myself and viewing pornography. I believe I am addicted to porn to the point that it really makes me impulsive, and I just don't realize that what I'm doing is wrong. I know it's not an excuse. I'm not trying to make excuses here, because I know when I told Dave that the sex crimes that I will forever, I'm not contesting it. I've been a musician for a long time, maybe 25, 30 years. You know, to be a musician and to be a monster like you're trying to say that I am, I don't think I can handle that. I'm a happy person inside. I am not a violent predator that you're trying to make me look a monster. I'm not a monster. I'm a normal person. I am just sick. I have an addiction, just like an alcoholic has an addiction. Alcoholics cannot control their addiction. That's why I couldn't control my addiction, Your Honor.
Well, he said that several times today, that he's not a monster, but today an Ohio court decided otherwise. Joining me now is former child sex abuse and sex crimes prosecutor Wendy Murphy, and Mark Klass, who is president of the Klass Kids Foundation, a group he formed after the kidnap and murder of his daughter. And thanks to both of you for coming on tonight. Mark, I honestly don't know how anyone could sit and watch this and not be both horrified and shocked by what we saw and heard today. But in another way, I thought it was remarkable. It was life-affirming when we heard from this young woman and from the family members of the other two who lived in this hell for a decade. As someone who lost a child, as someone who deals with families all the time, what went through your mind as you watched this today?
Well, Chris, actually, I was physically shaken by his testimony because it really sent me back to a time about 17 years ago when I sat in a courtroom and listened to the killer of my daughter make his own excuses and justifications. And it's mind-boggling that these guys are even given an opportunity to speak when they denied their victims that opportunity for so long. But I think Michelle has shown a remarkable amount of grace and a remarkable amount of dignity throughout her ordeal. From the moment that she's been released until now, she's stood up very tall, and she's made us all very proud of her.
And they talked about harmony in that home. Wendy, this is a place with an alarm on the back door, a place where we saw 100 feet of change, a place where there was a helmet for these young women to wear when he raped them. It was beyond.
Well, you know, I think about the dictionary. It's full of how many words, and that would be the last one I would come up with, harmony. But I so agree with Mark that this was so repulsive, and not just repulsive because of his words and his behavior and his attitude. It was repulsive that in an American legal system, we have to tolerate that. Because not only was it undignified, but his victim, one of his victims, was sitting right there, and he turned to her and said, not only did she consent to sex, it's like a prison guard saying that rapes of prisoners is delightful. He said, not only did she consent, but her family didn't even care about her. Now, this what bothered me in addition, Chris. There were two lawyers for two of the three victims sitting in that courtroom today. And there is a right the victims have by Ohio law, a right to be treated with respect and dignity throughout the process. What were they there for, if not to object right then and there and say, I object, shut him up. That is not respectful of this poor girl. I was so angry watching him speak. And when he did that, boy, if I had been in that courtroom, I'd probably be in jail for contempt.
And she actually spoke about how she could forgive Castro, which I thought was remarkable, although she also said she couldn't forget. Let me play a little more of her incredible statement today.
I will live on. You will die a little every day. As you think about the 11 years and atrocities you could inflict it on us. What does God think of you hypocritically going to church every Sunday? Coming home to torture us. The death penalty will be so much easier. You don't deserve that. You deserve to spend life in prison. I can forgive you, but I'll never forget.
And Mark, when you watch that and heard what had happened to her and these two other women, not to mention the child, the 6-year-old child, you do wonder, what is punishment? I mean, there is no punishment to me that fits this crime, is there?
Well, first of all, Michelle's got a much greater capacity for forgiveness than I have ever had. There is no way that I could have even said the words that she said. There's no punishment bad enough for this guy. I think in an ideal world, he should be executed. But that would have meant a trial. It would have meant the women had to testify. They certainly didn't want to testify. They've been spared that. This is absolutely the best we can hope for. He should never be seen nor heard from again.
Yeah, I also thought... Go ahead.
Can I just add one quick thing, Chris? Because here's the thing that felt underdone to me as well, because there were certainly plenty of charges, and he's there for his life plus 1,000 years. Obviously, that's the max plus. I thought what was underdone was the characterization of him targeting young women based on gender, for sex-specific crimes, for gender-specific crimes, the enslavement of it all, 10 years, chains. Why were we not hearing the prosecution call this a civil rights violation? There is a law in Ohio that if you target people based on who they are in society, based on race, gender, ethnicity, whatever, that is a civil rights violation. This should have been framed as such. It also, in my opinion, should have been prosecuted, at least a piece of it, under the human trafficking law, which is brand new in Ohio as of 2010. Why pass a law about human trafficking and not use it for this case? This is quintessential human trafficking. I don't understand it. I feel very frustrated that the human rights nature of this crime, the civil rights nature of this crime, has been ignored by the people in positions of power in Ohio, and they wanted to act heroic today. I did not see them as heroic.
Well, the one thing I did see as heroic was this young woman, the statements from the family members. The people had to go up there and speak because obviously these family members were very much victims as well. From Gina DeJesus' cousin, she said, "To the Castro family, we do not hold you accountable and pray you can one day be whole again. Our family recognizes it is not for us to judge." That just literally, Mark, took my breath away. And if it says one thing about this in the statements that all of these young women or their families made, I thought to myself, they do seem to be getting help. Someone is helping them to cope with this. The resilience, I think the way it was put in the report by the psychiatrist who talked to them was fortitude, courage, grace. I would add resilience. Remarkable.
There's no question that she's a remarkable young woman, that society's response has been remarkable, but that doesn't mean that their recovery is going to be any easier. I've known victims who have been held captive for only days, and it's taken them years, if not decades, to recover. I'd very quickly, though, like to read something that I received in a note from Michelle just a couple of weeks ago, and this is just a very small part of it. She said, "Just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, she became a butterfly." I just am in awe of this young woman and her capacity for understanding and the depth of her reasoning.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. She made a similar statement to police in thanking them. They have all been very thankful. And I should point out, Mark Klaas, and correct me if I get this wrong, but I believe that she is the first recipient of the Klaas Family Housing Fund. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. This is something that we put together earlier this year. It's funded by a woman named Tracy McLaughlin, who's a real estate professional where I live, and she wanted to do something to help the victims of kidnapping with their housing costs, realizing and understanding that when a child is kidnapped, that everything else falls out the window and you can very quickly slide into financial ruin. She wanted to be there to help them specifically with housing costs because that's her profession. We decided that Michelle would be an excellent choice for our first recipient, so that's exactly what we did.
Well, bravo. Mark Klaas, thank you for coming on. Wendy Murphy, thank you as well for being on the program tonight.
You bet.